Tasha White walked into the grand entrance of Lexington High School, the place where students born into wealth and privilege ruled the halls. Located in a bustling city, the school was known for its elite student body, most of whom came from families with vast influence in both business and politics. The campus was sprawling, with pristine lawns, elegant brick buildings, and state-of-the-art facilities that seemed more like a private club than an educational institution. Students at Lexington High lived by unwritten rules, the first of which was clear. Status was everything. Social groups were carefully curated, with students from powerful families at the top of the hierarchy and the others scrambling to fit in wherever they could. For some, it was a constant competition for dominance and recognition, a daily battle for who mattered most. Tasha wasn't interested in this. She wasn't here to win any popularity contests or climb the social ladder. She had come to finish her senior year, complete her studies, and get her diploma so she could move on with her life. Coming from a working-class background in Chicago, she wasn't accustomed to this world of privilege, but she had learned to survive wherever she was. Her family had taught her the value of hard work, perseverance, and most of all, self-respect. Her appearance was modest: a simple jacket, well-worn jeans, and a pair of sneakers. There was nothing about her that screamed for attention. She had learned early in life that blending in was often the safest way to survive. She had no desire to stand out, no desire to make waves. The last thing she wanted was to be the subject of gossip or ridicule. As she walked through the front doors, she couldn't help but notice the way students were grouped into their cliques. There were the jocks, gathered near the lockers in their varsity jackets, the cheerleaders, laughing and whispering to each other, their perfectly styled hair shining under the bright fluorescent lights, and the wealthier students, dressed in the latest designer clothes, flashing the most expensive gadgets. The social structure was obvious, and Tasha wasn't part of it. Despite her best efforts to remain unnoticed, Tasha's presence did not go unrecognized. She had just entered a world where everyone was keenly aware of the new person, especially someone like her, different, an outsider. Whispers followed her as she walked down the hallway, some glances lingering longer than others. She could hear them, her shoes clicking on the polished floor, and then the murmurs behind her back. It wasn't anything new. She'd been through this before. When you were black and from a different background, you were always the subject of curiosity, the target for judgment. But Tasha kept her head high and her pace steady, refusing to let their eyes faze her. By the time she reached her locker, she already knew what was coming. In any new school, there would always be someone who would make it their mission to make her life harder. And here, at Lexington High, it was no different. She could sense it in the air, the subtle shift as a group of students approached her. At the center of this group was Sarah Johnson. Tall, blonde, and confident, Sarah was the undisputed queen of the school, always surrounded by her loyal followers. Her status was untouchable, and she had made a name for herself by being the loudest, the most attention-grabbing. She was the girl everyone wanted to be, or at least, everyone feared. Sarah's entourage was made up of her close-knit circle: James Miller, her athletic, charming boyfriend, the star of the basketball team; Emma Roberts, her ever-present sidekick, who did whatever Sarah told her; and Chris Hall, a quiet but observant student who often hung around the edges of their group. They had all noticed Tasha's quiet entrance into the school, and that in itself made her an immediate target. Sarah looked her up and down with an expression of amusement, sizing her up as though Tasha were something to be discarded. She turned to her friends and made a comment that was just loud enough for Tasha to hear, her words dripping with condescension. "Oh, the new girl. I wonder how long she'll last in this place." Tasha didn't flinch, didn't even acknowledge Sarah's words. She simply turned the combination lock on her locker, her thoughts focused on the task at hand. But Sarah wasn't done. She sauntered over to Tasha's locker, her smile widening, and said, "You should know, we don't really take kindly to people like you around here." Tasha knew what that meant. She had seen it in other schools before, the invisible lines that people like Sarah drew, lines that were meant to keep people like Tasha on the outside. But Tasha wasn't scared. She didn't need to be liked. She had survived far worse in life than high school politics. She gave Sarah a calm, composed look, then turned her attention back to her locker, effectively ignoring her. Sarah's smile faltered for a moment, her words hanging in the air as if waiting for a response. But Tasha didn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, she took her books from her locker and walked away, leaving Sarah standing there with a scowl. Tasha didn't need to explain herself to anyone. She wasn't here for drama. She wasn't here for the popularity contests. She was here to finish what she had started. But deep down, she knew that the challenge of surviving at a school like this had only just begun. Tasha walked through the crowded hallways of Lexington High, her steps measured and purposeful. She had learned early in life that staying unnoticed was often the safest route, and she had no intention of making a scene here, not in a school like this. Her focus was entirely on finishing her senior year and earning her diploma. Nothing more, nothing less. But as she moved through the halls, she could feel the weight of the stairs. She had expected some attention. Being the new girl was always a bit of a spectacle. But here, the glances were sharper, colder, more judgmental than she had anticipated. The whispers followed her like a persistent echo, and she could sense the invisible wall that had been erected around her. She wasn't like the other students here, and they made that fact painfully clear. As she passed the lockers, Tasha caught a few eyes glancing her way, some filled with curiosity, others with disdain. She kept her gaze straight ahead, not bothering to acknowledge them. She wasn't interested in playing by their rules. She had been through too much in life to care about high school drama, but even so, she couldn't ignore the tension in the air. It didn't take long for her to spot Sarah Johnson, the queen bee of the school. Sarah was surrounded by her usual entourage: Emma, her ever-loyal friend, and James, the athletic golden boy who seemed to always be in tow. Sarah's gaze immediately locked onto Tasha as she walked past, and Tasha could feel the hostility radiating from her. Sarah's lips curled into a smile that was more condescending than friendly, and she leaned in close to Emma, whispering something that Tasha could barely catch. But it was enough. The words floated through the air, reaching Tasha's ears like daggers. "Who does she think she is?" Sarah said loud enough for Tasha to hear, her voice dripping with scorn. "She's a nobody, just another outsider trying to fit in." Tasha didn't flinch, didn't break her stride. She had heard it all before, in different schools, different cities. The whispers of people who thought they knew her, thought they could judge her by her appearance, her background. But she wasn't here to prove herself to them. She was here for one thing: to finish school. As the day wore on, Tasha felt the pressure building. It wasn't the stares alone. It was the quiet jabs, the subtle insults. Every now and then she would catch Sarah and her friends sneering at her from across the hallway, or whispering behind their hands when she passed by. The things they said were hardly original. Remarks about her clothes, about her family, about the way she carried herself. Tasha ignored them all. She refused to engage, to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. But it wasn't easy. It was hard to keep quiet when every fiber of her being wanted to stand up for herself, to say something back. But she knew if she did, it would only give them the ammunition they needed. In class, it was no different. Sarah's group made sure to make her feel as uncomfortable as possible. Emma would make snide comments about her handwriting, about the way she answered questions in class. James would pass her notes, written in bold, mocking letters, trying to get a rise out of her. But Tasha kept her head down, her eyes on the work in front of her. The louder they got, the quieter she became. By lunchtime, the tension had reached a boiling point. Tasha had always been used to eating alone. It was something she had gotten used to, something she preferred. But today, the cafeteria felt different. Sarah and her crew were sitting nearby, making sure to make their presence known, whispering loudly enough for Tasha to hear, laughing at her expense. Tasha picked up her lunch tray and found an empty spot at the back of the cafeteria, as far from the others as possible. She sat down, taking a deep breath and trying to ignore the sounds of the laughter echoing through the room. It wasn't easy. She could feel their eyes on her, but she didn't look up. She just focused on her food, trying to drown out the noise. But Sarah wasn't done. She had made her mind up that Tasha wasn't going to get away with ignoring her. and she wasn't going to let the new girl think she could simply escape from the spotlight. With a confident stride, Sarah walked over to Tasha's table, flanked by Emma and James, her usual entourage in tow. Tasha knew what was coming. She didn't need to look up to know that this was about to get ugly. "Oh, look, the new girl," Sarah said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "I guess she thinks she can just hide away in the corner like no one's going to notice. How cute." The table was silent, save for the sound of Sarah's taunting. Tasha still didn't respond, her face calm and unreadable, her eyes still focused on her tray of food. Sarah, frustrated by Tasha's lack of reaction, took a step closer, her voice growing louder. "You're really just going to sit here and ignore me, huh?" Without warning, Sarah shoved Tasha's tray of food, sending it crashing to the floor. The room went silent, all eyes suddenly on the scene unfolding before them. Tasha's food spilled across the floor, the bright yellow mashed potatoes and gravy staining the tiles beneath her. The laughter started again, louder this time, the sound of it washing over her. But Tasha didn't move, she didn't flinch or shout, she didn't even raise her voice. Instead, she calmly stood up, picked up the tray, and walked over to the trash can. Her movements were smooth, controlled, and deliberate. She didn't look at Sarah, didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She just threw the ruined tray away and turned to walk out of the cafeteria, her expression unchanged. As she walked away, she could feel Sarah's eyes burning into her back. But Tasha didn't look back. She didn't need to. The whispers that followed her, the mocking laughter, it all faded into the background. It was the same routine she had followed all her life. Ignore the noise, keep moving forward, and stay true to herself. But Sarah wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. She had made it her mission to break Tasha, and she wasn't going to stop until she had succeeded. The days following the cafeteria incident were tense for Tasha. The taunts and sneers from Sarah and her group of friends seemed to follow her everywhere she went. The whispers, the mocking comments, and the stares were a constant reminder that she was still the target. But Tasha didn't let it get to her. In the quiet of her room at night, she would close her eyes and remember the training sessions with her father. Darius Brooks, her dad, had been a professional fighter and a martial arts trainer for years. From the time she was little, he had drilled the importance of self-discipline and the skills of defense into her. He never wanted her to be a fighter for the sake of violence. Instead, he taught her to protect herself when no one else would, to stand her ground, and, most importantly, to always remain calm in the face of provocation. She knew that if it ever came down to it, she could defend herself, but only as a last resort. Her father's words echoed in her mind. You don't start conflicts, but if they push you to the edge, don't hesitate to end it before they can keep pushing. Tasha had no desire for confrontation, but she wouldn't allow herself to be humiliated or diminished, not by anyone, especially not by Sarah. That same night, as Tasha lay in bed, she made a decision. She wasn't going to let herself be knocked down anymore. She wasn't going to be the silent girl who took it all. If Sarah and her friends wanted to make her their punching bag, they had another thing coming. But Tasha wasn't planning on seeking revenge or taking them down. No, her approach was different. She would make them see that she wasn't the one to mess with. The next day, she walked into school with a sense of calm confidence. She had a different energy about her now. She wasn't walking with her head down, trying to avoid attention. Instead, she held her head high, her back straight, walking through the halls as if she owned them. When she entered the gym for PE class, she immediately noticed Sarah and her group sitting at the bleachers, talking and laughing. The same group that had made her life miserable over the past few days. Sarah, as usual, was the loudest, her voice carrying across the gym. Tasha didn't flinch or even acknowledge them. Instead, she went about her business, changing into her gym clothes with deliberate calm. But Sarah, never one to let someone ignore her, noticed. Her eyes narrowed as she saw Tasha moving confidently, as if nothing had happened. She wasn't cowering, wasn't hiding. Instead, she was calm, collected, almost as if she had forgotten the humiliation Sarah had subjected her to just days before. A few minutes into the class, as Tasha was practicing some drills, Sarah walked over to her. She had a smirk on her face, the same smirk that had always made Tasha feel small and insignificant. But today, Tasha wasn't fazed. Well, well, Sarah said, loud enough for everyone around to hear. I thought you were too shy to actually do anything in this gym. Are you sure you want to keep pretending like you belong here? Tasha didn't respond immediately. She focused on her movements, keeping her eyes on the floor. She didn't want to give Sarah the satisfaction of seeing her react. But Sarah wasn't done. She stepped closer, now standing right in front of Tasha. Tasha stood still, her back straight and her eyes unwavering. I told you once, she said calmly, her voice steady and controlled. Don't do it again. Sarah scoffed. Oh, so now you're the tough girl, huh? What's it gonna be? Are you going to cry like last time? Or should we push you a little more to see what happens? For the first time since she'd arrived at Brooklyn High, Tasha's face didn't betray her. She looked up at Sarah, locking eyes with her. The confidence in her gaze was unmistakable. For a second, Sarah faltered, her smirk slipping. It was as if she had expected Tasha to crumble, to let her words get to her. But there was no fear, no shame in Tasha's eyes. Tasha took a step forward. I don't need to prove anything to you, she said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. But if you keep testing me, I will show you exactly what I'm capable of. The crowd around them had gone quiet. They were watching, waiting to see how Sarah would react. Sarah hesitated for a moment, but then her anger flared. With a quick motion, she shoved Tasha, pushing her hard in the chest. The force made Tasha take a step back, but she didn't lose her balance. The class went completely silent. Tasha stood still, her fists clenching at her sides. In one fluid motion, she closed the gap between her and Sarah. With a quick twist, she grabbed Sarah's wrist and forced her arm into a lock, using Sarah's momentum against her. Sarah gasped in pain, her face turning red as she struggled to break free. The gym teacher was nowhere near, too far away to intervene. The other students watched in stunned silence as Tasha held Sarah in place, her face a picture of calm. The room felt tense as Sarah's friends started to move toward her, but none of them made a move to help her. I warned you, Tasha said quietly, her grip tightening just enough to make Sarah wince. I'm not your punching bag, and I'm not someone you can push around. Finally, Tasha let go, stepping back as Sarah stumbled, her face flushed with humiliation. The smirk that had been on Sarah's face was gone, replaced by a look of shock and confusion. Tasha didn't wait for a reaction. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Sarah standing there, too stunned to speak. The whispers that followed her were different this time. They weren't mocking or scornful, they were filled with disbelief. The students around her watched as Tasha made her way back to the gym, her calm demeanor unnerving them all. As the bell rang, signaling the end of PE, Sarah's group remained silent, the once confident energy completely drained. Sarah, still rubbing her wrist, didn't speak to anyone. She just stared after Tasha, who had moved on like nothing had happened. In the days that followed, the rumors spread throughout the school. Students who had once seen Tasha as an easy target now began to respect her. They didn't know her story, her background, or her struggles, but they saw her strength. And that was enough. Sarah, meanwhile, became more and more isolated. The power dynamic had shifted, and she could no longer control the narrative. The whispers that followed Tasha were no longer about her being the new girl. They were about her being someone not to be messed with. Throughout this time, Tasha never once sought revenge. She didn't go out of her way to humiliate Sarah or to gloat. She just kept going. She kept doing her work, kept walking the halls with the same calm assurance that had always defined her. The respect she gained wasn't from her ability to fight back. It was from her strength to remain true to herself in the face of adversity. As the school year drew to a close, something remarkable happened. At the year-end assembly, the student body stood up and clapped for Tasha. It wasn't an explosive applause. It wasn't the kind of applause that came from winning a competition or being the most popular kid in school. It was the kind of applause that came from recognizing someone who had stood their ground and remained true to their principles. Tasha had earned the respect of her peers, not through dominance, but through dignity. And Sarah? She had learned the hardest lesson of all. She had learned that true power wasn't in making others feel small. It wasn't in humiliating people to secure your place at the top. True power came from within, from how you carried yourself and how you treated others. And in the end, Sarah realized that Tasha had something far more valuable than she had ever possessed: the respect of everyone around her, earned through her integrity and strength. As Tasha walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She hadn't just survived the year. She had thrived. She had turned the tables in a way no one had expected, and she had done it with grace and strength. The students who had once ignored her or mocked her were now watching her with newfound respect. Tasha had shown them that you didn't have to be loud to be powerful. You just had to be yourself. As the applause rang out, Tasha smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of quiet satisfaction. She had proven what she needed to prove. Not to anyone else, but to herself. She had found her place, not as a victim or a challenger, but as someone who commanded respect without having to ask for it. Tasha's journey teaches us that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't through confrontation, but through calmness, strength, and resilience. If you believe in standing your ground with integrity, like and share this story. Let others know that true power lies within us all. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire and challenge the status quo.